In this video, we're going to show you how to become proficient in SAP Build Apps. Not just to do a beginner tutorial, but really understand how the whole system works. We're going to show you how to build a UI and create your own styles, how to create your own custom events, how to be able to reuse the same logic flows, how to create entities and functions in Visual Cloud Functions, how to call them from the UI, and really a whole lot more. So let's get right into it. The first thing that you're going to want to do is have a system. And if you have your own BTP account with SAP Build Apps, that's great. And if not, you can take 2 minutes and you can use the Sandbox system. All you need to do is first you can go to Joe Binkley's blog that explains the whole thing. It has a link. You can just click on the link and you will be taken to a registration page. In the registration page, you put in a name, your email address, your password, some more things, and you will then get an email to verify your email address. Once you click, you will be taken to the lobby of an SAP Build Apps instance, empty, and you can start working. Now that we have a Sandbox system, the first thing to do is to create an application, to create a project, and to create our composite component that will let us display what we want to display. So we'll say create, build an application, a web and mobile application, and we'll call it social media. Okay, we'll get rid of our components that are there. And the first thing we need to do is we need to go into the marketplace. And the first thing we need to do is our large image component. So that's what we want. And we have to install it, but it's already installed, so we don't have to do anything. And now we have to go to the star rating component. And we'll go to the star rating and we'll install it. And now if we go to installed, we'll see this one. And further down, we'll see this one. But we want to make changes to them. And we may want to use the originals again. So we'll say duplicate the template, and we'll go to the star one and we'll also duplicate that one. And now we have both of them in the by me tab. Okay, so we now want to bring this component within this component. So we'll just create a, first of all, we'll save. And now we'll bring this component onto the canvas. But we want to make changes to it. So the first thing we do is we say, open up the template editor. And we want to get rid of this one. Okay. And now we want to add a container. So we'll add a container and we'll do it down here. Okay. Whoops. Let's select this component and we will put a container there. And now we want to add a star rating to it. So we'll do that here. And we want two text components. Oops. Text components. Put the text components after the star rating. And now we have both of those components. Okay. But we want our container to display horizontal. Okay. And we want the components to be even with each other. Now we want to add component properties. So we can go into the properties and we say properties, and we want to add two properties. One is the ratings, and now we want to add another one for the rating count, which tells us how many ratings we're given. Another thing that we need to do, so let's save that. And each of those components will be a number. So we'll change it to a number. To a number. Oops, not true, false, but a number. And now we want to say, back to our component, we want to say that this will be a number. Whatever the rating is, we want this value to show the rating. So we will come in here, we will say we want a formula and show the formula. And this formula will just show the rating with 1 decimal point. So we'll come and we'll say OK. And now we want to do the same thing with the next one. And we want to say this will be the rating count in a similar way. So we'll set the formula to the property and we'll put it around parentheses. So we'll say OK. And now we want to make changes to this star rating. So what we need to do is we have to open up the template editor for that star rating. And the first thing we'll do is we'll find the icon. And we'll say we want to change the style. So we'll change the style. And we will say that the color will be a static color. And we will say it is F0AB00, which is SAP Orange. And we will do one more thing in the properties, which is in the properties, there's a value, and it's a two-way binding. Two-way binding means basically that just as I can set the property, if the property changes, it will go back the other way and set the source of that property. But we want to use a formula that requires it to be a one-way property. So we will turn it off. I'll save it. And I'll exit from here. And finally, we want to go back into the template editor for the component. We want to set the value of this, which will come from the internal property. So we'll bind it to a component property, an internal property, and we'll bind it to the rating. Okay, we'll save, and we'll exit out of here. Now what we want to do is create the backend. So we'll have to create a separate project for the backend. So we'll say create, build an application, but this time we want to do application backend. We'll call it a social media backend. We'll say create. And now what we want to do is we want to create two entities. So we're on the entities page already. We'll say create new. We'll call this rating. And we'll say add. And now we want a few properties. So the first thing we want to do is we want to say rating, and that will be a number. And then we want to add rated by, and this will be text. Then we want to do product ID, so for which product is the rating, and this is also a text. And finally, we want to do date created, and that's a date time. Okay, and we'll save. And now we want to create another one, another entity to store the comments. So we'll say comment. And we'll add some properties. So the properties that we need is comment, which will hold the comment. That's a text field. Then we will say for what product is this comment. And that's also a text field. And then we'll say commented by. That's also a text field. And finally, we'll also save the date. We'll say date created. Okay. And we'll add that. Okay. And we'll save our app again. Now we want to create a function that will always return. It will always return all the average ratings and the counts of those ratings for each of the products. So we'll go to function, we'll create a new function, and we will call it average rating. Okay. And we will create. We have no input, but we could have an input parameter. And we want to base this on all of the records in the rating table. So we'll select the rating table. And now the output we want, we will call ratings, since this will hold all of the products and the average rating and the count of that rating. And we will set a formula. And this is the formula that we will set. First, it will group all of the records, okay, together. And for each group, it will set a product ID, right? I'm sorry. It will group the records based on the product ID. And for each group, it will produce a single object, which will have the product ID, the average of all of the items for that product, and the count of all those items for that product. So we'll save that. We'll add it, and we'll save the app. Okay? And now all we need to do is deploy it. So we'll deploy it. Since this is the first time, there are no conflicts or anything like that, and we'll move along. It takes about a minute or so for this to deploy. Once it's deployed, we can start using it from our front end. Okay, now we want to start with our front end to show all the products and the average rating. So we'll go back to our project. And the first thing we'll go is to the navigation. And you can see it says that this page is called empty page. So we want to change that. And we want to call this list of products. And we have to go back into the page for a second and change the page name. So we click anywhere and we say list of products. And we say save. Let's just double check in navigation. List of products, list of products. Very good. Now we want to get the data from the backend. But we'll have to enable BTP authentication. So let's go into authentication, enable authentication, BTP authentication, and just say OK. And that's all we need to do. Okay, and it actually automatically saves it for us. Now, what we want to do is we want to create the data resources. So the first thing we can do is get the Northwind, because we use Northwind to show product data. We already have a destination for this, and I'm going to use the destination. But what I want to do is to show you how we would do it manually. So we could go to here, and we could do OData authentication. We could say the base URL is Northwind. We could verify. We could see all of the entities. We can enable one of the entities, and then we would get a products entity. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to add integration, BTP destination, and here's where we could have connected to S4HANA destination or S4HANA Cloud destinations or a CAP service or whatever we want. But we already have Northwind, so we'll connect to Northwind. Now it brings back all of the entities, and I want the product entity. I could browse the data. Here's all the data. I can create new records. So I want to install the integration. I want to enable the products, and I want to save. So now I have, if I go back to my data, a product entity. Okay. So now we want to create the data resources for the backend. So we again want to create an integration, cloud function, social media backend. And here is all of our entities that we created. So we want to install this integration. we now want to enable this data entity. We want to enable the comment. And now we go to Cloud Functions, and we need to enable this one as well. We'll save. And now we've created data resources for all our backend. The next thing we need to do is to create a set of variables. So the first thing we need is to go back to our UI canvas and go to variables. The first thing we want is an app variable to hold all of the ratings for all of the products. So we'll call this ratings. And this will be a list. This is what we're going to get back, a list of all of the ratings. But we can just say that this is an object, a list of objects, instead of defining a schema for the whole thing. So we'll save that. And now we need a data variable to hold the business data or the products information. So we'll take the products and we'll keep it at a collection of data. And we will save. And that's all we need. Now we want to bind the composite. So we'll go back to the view. We'll select our composite component. And the first thing we'll do is we'll do the repeat width. And the repeat width will be based on all of the products. So we'll connect it to the data variable that represents products. And now you can see there are multiple items. And then we'll say, what do we want the title to be? And the title we want to be a data item in the repeat. And here's all of the fields in that entity, and we'll select the product name. And we'll save. Now we want to say, what is the rating? What we'll do here is we'll take a formula. The ratings will be all of the ratings that we get back. We want to find the one related to the current product. And once we do that, we want to take the average field in that set of, in that object. So that's what we'll do for that. And then we want to do the same for the rating count. So we want a formula, and we have a formula for that, which is basically the same thing. We find the correct object, and we return this time, instead of the average, the count. So we'll save that. Now the last thing we want to do is we want to have an image for each product. But we don't have an image for each product, so instead we'll just take a random image. And so we'll say that the URL is from this site that produces random images. And we'll save. The only thing we want to do is change the style. So we'll edit the style to make it look a little nicer. We want to give it an effect of a shadow, so we'll turn the shadow on. We'll pick one of the selects, and we'll set the shade of the shadow to something that we like. Finally, we want to get the rating data. So we want to, we connected our component to the app variable, but we never got the ratings into the app variable. So we select any place on the canvas. We open up the logic canvas, and we say we want to execute that function that we created. So we'll look for the function, drag it here. Let's get rid of this one, make it easier. So whenever the page mounts, we're going to execute a function. That function will be the average rating. So now we're fine. And now we want to take that data and put it into our app variable. So we're going to call the app variable ratings. That's the only app variable we have. And now we're going to say we want the output to be from the execute function. My fault. We will need to do a variable because it doesn't know the schema. So let's go back and pick a formula. And this formula will say, I want the output of the execute function, and I want the field called ratings, which will have a list of all of the objects for all the products. Okay. Now we have all of the rating data from the cloud function in our application. And finally, what we can do is run the app. So let's go and launch. Open the web preview. This is social media. Okay. And now we see all the pictures we get, the names of the product. Since we haven't started collecting ratings, everything is 0, 0. Okay. There's a couple of things I missed. So let's go back. The first thing we want to do is we want to open the component up again. And we want this rating to be 5 stars. That's the first thing. Okay. If we go back to our app, we'll see that now we have 5 stars. Okay, we've created the product page. It lists all of our ratings and the count of those ratings and the products, our composite component. Now we want to have a detail page that will let us actually add ratings and comments. So this will come in 2 parts. The first is we will create the skeleton of the second page. So the first thing we need to do is to create a new page. We come up here, we see the list of our pages, we add a new page, and we'll call this product page. Okay, we save, and we want to delete all of these components, and we'll save again. Okay, so we're just creating the skeleton of it. We're not adding UI components. We want to make sure we have all of the variables. So the first variable that we need is a page variable. We actually need a bunch of page variables. So we'll go to variables, we'll go to page variables, and we'll add a bunch of page variables, actually 5. Okay. The first one we will call rating complete, and this will be true false. It will indicate when the user has completed rating a product. The next one will be new comment, which will be text, which will contain any comment that the person wants to post. We'll then change the third one to page size, which will indicate how many comments we want to display on the page. Rating will contain the rating that the user gives, if they give one. And finally, total count, whoops, oops, I did something wrong. Let me do total count. And this will be the total number of comments we have. So we have total count, we have rating complete. I overrode the page size, so sorry about that. We'll go to page size and number. Now we have all of the variables that we need. Now we go to page parameter. Now every time we navigate here, we want to tell the page, and we need this information, what's the product for this page. So we'll add a page parameter. We'll call it product ID, and it will be a text variable. Okay, now we need a data variable. We want to get all of the comments. So the first thing we want to do is get the comments. But we are going to delete all of the flow functions because we will manually get the comments later. Okay, usually we get them automatically, but we want to be able to get them in many, many places. So we want to put it in a place that we can call. Then we also want the product data, product. Okay, we'll remove the delay because we don't want to keep doing it. And when we say get record collection, we can say we want, whoops, my fault. with the product, we only want to get a single record. We want to get the record for the current product. So we come here and we say product ID will set to whatever is the product ID that was sent in. So it will be the page parameter called product ID, whatever is sent in. But of course we have to make sure that it's a number, so we send it as a number. So we save that. So let's make sure that's okay. Make sure the comments is empty. Perfect. And let's save. Now we want to enable refreshing of the comments. So we'll go back to any place. Let's go back to view. So we'll click anywhere on the page. And what we want to do is we want to get all of the comments for this product. So we'll get all of the comments. We'll then set the data variable with all of the comments. And finally, we will set a page variable that will give us the count of the comments that there are. So the first thing we do is go to the record collection. We say we want the comments. So now we have the comments. Second thing we want to do is we want to filter for only the current comments. So we'll object with properties, we'll add a condition. We'll say we want the product ID to equal the page parameter, which is passed in, that contains the product that we want to see the comments for. Now we'll order, because we want to see these in reverse chronological order. So date created descending is what we want. And finally, we want to paginate based on the page size. So we'll have an object with properties. This is fine. The page size will always be the page variable, page size. The page number is always 1, and we'll include the count. So we'll say we want a static value, and we want this to be true. So now we want to set the variable. We want to set the comment variable, and we want the record collection as the output, the output of the get record collection. So we'll get the record collection and we'll put it in that variable. And finally, we want to set the page variable of total count. And we want that to be the output value of the get record collection of the total count, because we asked that that be returned. Save. Now, the cool magic is we want to be able to call this logic from any place. So what we do is we'll get rid of this, and we want to create an event. So we say receive event, okay? And whenever we receive this event, we want to also run and get the comments. So the event that will do this is a trigger event over here. And we have to give it a name. So we will give it a name called refresh comments. Okay. And we'll save. And so when the page starts, the comments will be retrieved. But there might be other times when we want to retrieve the comments. That's all we need to do to set up the page before we set up the UI of the page. Okay, now we'll set up this detail page, which is probably the most complicated thing that we have to do. So the first thing is we want to have the product name and its current rating. So what we'll do here, the easiest thing to do is to use the tree view. And we'll say that we want a container so that we can modify the layout. We'll have a title that will be the product name within this container. We'll have a star rating. And we will have text, which will show us the rating. Okay? We will go to the container. We will say we want the layout to be horizontal. We want things to be even. We want to select the title, so we'll select the title. This will be in the data variable for the product, and we want the product name there. Okay. For the star rating, we again want the maximum value to be 5, and we want to get the value. So we'll set up a formula, and this will find in all of the ratings list that we get back and we put in the app variable, this will show us the average from that list for this product. And of course, if we don't find an average there, we will just say 0, which means that there were no ratings. We'll save. We also want to say that this is view only, so it's true. We want to go to layout, and we want to say we want to fit the content. We don't want to extend it. Okay. For the text component, we want to show the actual number. So we'll go to the content, we'll say a formula, and we'll put in this formula, which again finds the rating for this product, but displays it to 1 decimal point. And we'll save. Okay. That's all we need to do. Now let's users rate the product. So the first thing we do, just to make it nicer, is we'll use a list divider. Okay. We'll double click the divider so that we get the style palette. We can go to style, and we can go to border. We can make the green. We can say that it's solid. We can say that it's thick, and then we can exit. Okay, it shows as a rectangle, but it will be just a line. Now that we've done it, we can copy it and paste it, and now we have 2. Okay, we'll just save, play it safe. Now, in between, what we want to do is we again want to add a container. We'll do that through the tree view. And in the container, we want to add a text. So we'll add a text. And we will add one of the star ratings. We'll go to the Buy Me page. We will put a star rating there. And that's all we need. So the first thing we do is we go to the text, and we say we want to just say rate this product. We also want to go to the layout and say, that the width should be fit the content. And under the style, we will edit the style. And under typography, we will say that we want it to be small text. Okay. For the rating, we want to say that it's 1 to 5 again. We want to say that the value is the page variable rating, because it will store when the user rates it. And view only will be also based on a page variable that will say rating complete. Okay, so when the user clicks this, we will automatically change it so it will disable the function so the user cannot change or rate again. Okay. Now we will add some logic. we will add logic. Now we have this pane, and we say that anytime this rating is changed, we want to add a rating in the backend. So we will change this to page value changed. And now we will add a bunch of functions. The first one is if. If there's a certain condition, we will create a record in the backend. Create a record in the backend. We will set a page variable. And we will execute a cloud function because the rating will have changed, and we will want to get the new average. So we will do that. And once we get that, we will set our app variable again with all of the new values. Okay? So let's go one by one. The if condition says that if the person has selected a rating that isn't 0, then we want to proceed. Okay? And what do we want to do? We want to create a record in the rating. So the first thing we do is we say we want to update the rating. And then we say, oh, what do we want to send them? Let's just delete the schema that we don't know anything about. For the rating, we want to send the actual rating, which is now being stored in a page variable called rating. For the rated by, I'm just going to have static text that says Daniel. For the product ID, of course, it's stored in the page parameter, product ID. And the date created is now. So we'll use a formula. That's just now. And we will save it. Once we create the record, we will want to say that the rating is complete, and we want to disable it. So we'll say we want to set rating complete to true. And then we want to get back the new average of all of the ratings. So we'll get the average rating, and then we'll set the rating variable to the output of the execute cloud function. And of course, since we haven't defined the schema, we'll have to do this through a formula. Don't mind that this is red. You can still save it and it will work just fine. We'll save. Okay. And we can now test what we have so far. So we'll go like this. The one thing we haven't done is we haven't allowed you to navigate from the product list to the product page. So we'll go back to the list of products. Every time somebody clicks on this, we will open the page. We will open the page called product page. And once we do that, we are now required to send a parameter of the product ID. So what we can do is we can say the data item in repeat, and we can send the current product ID. But, of course, the problem is that we have to, the product ID here is a number, and what we have to send is a text field. So let's go back into the formula, which can always, and we can say string of repeat product ID. We can launch the application. We can select the product. We can rate the product to 4. And you can see up here, it updates the product. If we go back to the list of products, and now we pick the product again, and we pick a 1, we see that the overall rating changed to 2.5. Now, two things I forgot to do, is the spacing here is quite big, and also the star is no longer the orange star. So I'll show you how to fix those things. If I go back to the application, and I go back to the list of products page, okay, I had originally opened this up into the template editor, and then I opened up the star rating, and I went to the style, and I selected the icon, and you can see that I updated it to the orange, but I didn't overwrite the style for every place that this appears. So I will overwrite it. I will save. If I come back here and I go to that page, I will now see that the stars are orange. Let me go back and fix the spacing. So if I go to the product page, I can say this field, I want the width to just be what's needed, and I want the width of this to be what's needed. I save, I come back here, I open up the page, and the page spacing is much better. I also want these two things to be on the same line. I'll come back, I'll select the container that contains them both, I'll do the layout and set it to horizontal and align to middle. In this particular case, it could be, I'm not sure the middle is the best, but we'll look. We'll select the product, and that's pretty good. Okay, now we want to add a list of comments. So fortunately, this is much easier. We'll go back to the page, and we'll add a text component. We will add an input field, which will be the comment, and finally a button to post it. So for the text field, we'll say add comment, add comment. For the input box, we'll remove the label since we don't really need it. That'll be the comment box. And for the button, we'll say post. Okay. Now we actually have to post the comment. So if we click the post and open up the logic pane, we can say whenever anybody clicks that button, we want to create a record in the database. Always have a little bit of trouble finding the flow functions. I want to set the page variable of the page size, because now that I added a comment, I want it to display. So I want to add, set the page size to be different. And I have another page variable that I want to set. We'll go over that in a second. And let's do those first. So the first one is the page variable that I want to set. And, oh, I forgot to do the record, but let's just finish this. We want to be the page variable, the page size variable, to be a formula that just adds 1 to the previous page size. Okay, let's go back to the create record. We want to create a comment, and the fields for the comment, the first one will be the page variable which holds the new comment. The product ID, of course, will be the page parameter. Commented by will be me, of course. In reality, we would get the name of the user automatically, but that's not a feature that's available quite yet. And we'll say that the date created is now. and we'll save. So now we've created the comment. We've set the page variable to one more. And now we want to reset, we want to delete what the person wrote from the input box. So we'll just say the new comment, and we'll leave this empty. Okay, now you can see I made a mistake here. This is the error, but we want this to happen no matter what happens. I mean, if we create the record, we want to remove the comment. And finally, we want to refresh the list of comments that we get. So we will now trigger an event to refresh our comments. So we select the only event that we've created, which is refresh comments, and we can save. Finally, we want to display the comments. So the way we'll display the comments is we will have first a text element, then we will have a container. The text element will display, if there are no comments, a message that there are no comments. Then within the container, we'll have two text boxes, one that shows when the comment was done, and the other one that shows the actual comment. And finally, we'll have a button that if we want to display more of the comments, we can do that. So the first thing we'll do is we'll say that this will say no comments if there are no comments. But we will only say that if there are actually no comments. So we'll go to the advanced properties and we'll say this will be visible only if the list of comments is empty. Now we will go to the container. This is the last container that we added. And we will go to the style, to the layout container. We will edit it. And just as we did on the other one, we will change the effects of shadow to true. We will select the default or the first version. And we will set the color to a static color that this will be. And we will save. So now we get a little bit of a shadow, and it'll help us when we have a bunch of comments. Now we want to go to the Properties tab, and we want to say we want to repeat this for all of the comments in our data variable. So now you'll see that the comments will be repeated. On our first comment, in the first text box, we will set the context to this formula, which I will explain. It takes the current date created and displays it in a certain format, and also displays the person who actually wrote the comment. I'll save that. We want that to be a little bit smaller than the other one, so we'll go to Style. We'll edit the style. We'll go to Typography, and we'll say that we want that to be small text. Now we'll go to the second one, and we'll actually say that the value here will be a data item in repeat and the actual comment. And finally, in the button, we want to say that this says if the person wants more comments to display. And we will say that we only want to show the button if there are actually more comments. So we'll change the visibility to a formula which says if the total count of comments is more than the actual page size, there are obviously more comments to display, and I can display this button. And finally, if I select this button, we want to display more comments. So the first thing we do is we say we want to set the page variable of the page size, and we want to make it 3 more than what we have now. So we'll set a formula to the assigned value. Oops. And we'll just make it 3 more than the previous page size. And finally, we need to get the comments again. And we've set that up in reusable logic. So we have to trigger that event. So we'll trigger that event, and we'll trigger the refresh comments. And now let's run the app again. Okay, so first of all, we'll come here. We'll refresh the page. We'll select the first product. And we'll say, this is a nice product. And we'll post it. And you'll see that the message that there were no comments went away. And it posted the comments. But you can see that there's no comment. Okay, so let's go back and see what we did wrong. So when we post this comment, we say create record, custom object, new comment. And what we probably didn't do is connect this input box to the comment field. So you can see that the value is always 0. So we'll connect this to the comment, to the page variable new comment. We will save it, and we'll try again. Nice product. We'll post it, and we'll see the product. If we click more, we will see more comments. So there's something that we did wrong. So maybe we didn't set the page size an initial value. So let's go back to the variables. Let's go to the page variable. Let's say the page size, it says 0. Well, the initial page size should be 3. So let's save it. Let's try again. We'll come here. We now see the new comments. We don't see more. We'll add another comment. Does the product come in green? We'll post. And it's there. Yellow. And now the page is 1 more. Okay? Let's go back to the original page. And let's say we come to that page when there are 4 comments. We only see 3. We see the most recent 3. If we say more, we now get that comment, and the more button goes away.